The night had turned cold over the open highway, the wind cutting sharp through the mountains. On the edge of town, a small roadside motel flickered weakly under a buzzing neon sign that read vacancy. But there was something softer nearby, a campfire glowing beside a row of Harley-Davidsons, the low murmur of voices, and the metallic scent of oil and rain. That's when they saw them. An elderly couple walking slowly along the shoulder of the road, hand in hand. Their clothes were thin, their steps uneven, their faces pale from exhaustion. The woman leaned against the man for balance, and he was doing his best to keep her steady. They looked like they'd been walking for miles. The biker crew fell silent as the two came closer. One of the men, Ryder, stood up from beside the fire. His leather vest read, "Hell's Angels, Redwood Chapter." The others watched as the old man stopped a few feet away and said in a shaking voice, "Son, we don't mean to bother you. My wife and I, we can't walk anymore. The bus broke down 5 miles back. Do you think we could stay here just for the night? We won't be any trouble." Ryder's brow furrowed. He looked at the woman. Her lips were trembling, her shoes soaked through. Without a word, he took off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "You're not sleeping out here," he said simply. "Come on, sit by the fire." The woman hesitated. "We don't have money, son. We just need to rest for a bit." Ryder smiled faintly. "Good thing I didn't ask for any." He guided them toward the campfire while another biker, Tank, grabbed 2 spare chairs. "Coffee's still hot," he said, pouring them each a cup. "Might not taste like heaven, but it'll keep you warm." As the couple sat down, the other bikers, rough, tattooed, leathered men, quietly pulled out blankets from their saddlebags and placed them around the 2 strangers. No one said much. No one needed to. After a while, the old man looked up at Ryder, his eyes wet with gratitude. "You boys are kind," he said softly. "Not what folks say about your kind." Ryder chuckled. "People say a lot of things. Doesn't make 'em true." The woman smiled faintly. "You remind me of our son. He used to ride too." Ryder froze for a moment, then nodded slowly. Then he must have been a good man. The night carried on with quiet conversation and the crackle of the fire. The old couple fell asleep under the stars, wrapped in borrowed jackets and surrounded by men the world thought were monsters. By morning, they were gone, but not before leaving a small note written in shaky handwriting. "Thank you for your kindness. You've given us faith we thought was lost." The bikers stared at the note for a long moment. Tank broke the silence first. They didn't even say where they were headed. Ryder folded the paper carefully and tucked it into his vest. "Doesn't matter. We'll find them." By noon the next day, the sun was high and hot, but the memory of that night still clung to the group like the scent of smoke on leather. The note sat on the dashboard of Ryder's bike. The words burned into his mind. "You've given us faith we thought was lost." He couldn't shake it. The look in their eyes, the way the woman's hands trembled as she held her coffee cup. Something about it gnawed at him. "Boss," Tank called from across the lot. "You're thinking about them, aren't you?" Ryder nodded slowly, tightening the strap on his gloves. "Yeah, I am." The youngest member, Jay, looked up from tuning his bike. "You think they made it wherever they were going?" Ryder shook his head. "Doubt it. They didn't have a car, didn't have money. They were just walking." The group fell silent. Then, without another word, Ryder swung his leg over his bike. "We're gonna find him." "Find him?" Jay echoed. "Boss, they could be anywhere by now." Ryder started his engine, the roar cutting through the air like thunder. "Then we'll start with the bus stop they mentioned. Move out." One by one, the engines came to life, the kind of roar that made the whole world listen. They rode for miles, the highway stretching endless and bright, dust trailing behind them like smoke. About an hour later, they found the broken-down bus, still sitting by the side of the road, empty and rusting in the heat. No one else was around. But then, in the distance, Ryder spotted something. 2 figures sitting on a bench outside an old gas station, the woman resting her head on the man's shoulder. Ryder slowed, parking his bike quietly. The others followed, pulling up beside him. When the couple looked up and saw the familiar vests, their faces lit with disbelief. "You boys again?" the man asked, smiling weakly. Ryder grinned. "Told you we'd find you." The woman blinked back tears. "You didn't have to." "Yeah," he interrupted. "We did." He turned to the others. "Tank, Jay, get the supplies." Within minutes, the bikers began unloading gear from their saddlebags. A cooler full of food, fresh bottled water, a pair of new shoes, and even a few blankets. The couple just stared, unable to speak. You said you didn't have a car, Ryder said. So we got you one. Well, kinda. He motioned toward the end of the line, where a small pickup truck rolled up, dusty but running. You're joking, the old man whispered, his voice breaking. Ryder tossed him the keys. Ain't new, but she runs smooth. Tank and Jay fixed her up this morning. She's yours now. The old woman covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. We can't take this. Ryder shook his head, his voice steady but warm. You can, and you will. You gave us more than $5 or a night's story, ma'am. You reminded us what we ride for. The man's lip trembled as he stared at the keys in his hand. What do you mean? Ryder smiled faintly. Respect. Family. Doing right, even when nobody's watching. The old man stepped forward, placing a hand on Ryder's shoulder. You boys, you're angels. Ryder laughed softly. Not the kind with wings, old-timer. Ours come with engines. The couple stood frozen beside the truck, still unable to process what was happening. The old woman's hands trembled as she brushed her fingers along the dusty hood, as if she needed to feel the metal to believe it was real. The other bikers stayed quiet, their rough faces softened by something almost holy, the kind of moment no camera could ever capture. Son, the old man finally said, voice breaking, we don't even know how to thank you. Ryder crossed his arms, smirking gently. You already did. Last night, you trusted us enough to sit by our fire. Most folks wouldn't have. The old woman looked at him with tearful eyes. That wasn't trust, she said softly. That was kindness. The kind you don't see much anymore. Tank stepped forward, wiping his hands on a rag. Well, consider this payback. You warmed our fire. Now we're just returning the heat. The old man laughed through his tears, shaking his head. You boys are something else. Ryder smiled faintly. We're family, sir. Not by blood, but by code. And our code says nobody gets left behind. As he spoke, a few townspeople began gathering near the gas station, whispering among themselves. They'd seen the Hells Angels roll in, 20 strong, loud, intimidating. But what they saw now wasn't what they expected. A few of the bikers were helping the couple pack their small bags into the truck bed. Another was filling the tank with gas, while one knelt to lace up the new shoes they'd brought for the old man. The whispers turned into silence, then into awe. One of the bystanders, a middle-aged man in a work shirt, finally stepped forward. I heard stories about you boys, he said cautiously. None of them sounded like this. Ryder looked over, his tone calm but firm. That's 'cause people like talking more than listening. We don't go looking for halos, friend. We just make sure no one falls through the cracks. The man nodded slowly, then smiled. Well, consider me listening now. By the time the sun began to dip, the couple sat inside their new truck, the woman clutching a small bouquet of wildflowers the bikers had picked from the roadside. Before they left, she rolled down her window, eyes still glistening. I wish our son could have met you boys, she said. He would have fit right in. Ryder stepped closer, resting his hand gently on the window frame. He was probably one of us already, ma'am, just riding a different road. The truck pulled away slowly, the couple waving until they disappeared beyond the curve of the highway. The bikers stood in silence for a long moment, the rumble of engines waiting in the background. Tank finally broke the quiet. You think we'll ever see him again? Ryder smiled faintly, looking toward the horizon. Maybe not, but they'll remember us every time that engine starts. That's good enough for me. The sky turned orange as the sun sank behind the hills, painting the world in fire and peace. The rumble of the bikes quieted one by one until only the sound of the wind filled the air. Ryder stood beside his Harley, staring down the road where the old couple had disappeared. For a long while, no one spoke. Tank finally exhaled. You know, he said, we've done a lot of runs, bar fights, charity rides, cleanups, but that. He shook his head, smiling softly. That felt different. Ryder nodded. Eyes still on the horizon. Yeah, feels like we actually made a dent in the world today. Jay grinned. Not bad for a bunch of sinners, huh? The whole crew laughed, the sound rolling through the empty lot like thunder wrapped in warmth. The townspeople who had lingered behind the gas station began to clap quietly, slow at first, then louder. It wasn't applause for a show, it was gratitude, raw and real. An older woman in a blue dress stepped forward, wringing her hands. I judged you, she admitted softly. I told my husband to lock the doors when I saw you ride in. But what you did for that couple, She shook her head, her voice breaking. I was wrong about you. Ryder turned toward her and gave a small nod. Ma'am, he said gently. People see leather and noise and think that's all there is. But we're not what's on our backs. We're what we do. The woman smiled through her tears. Well, what you did today reminded this whole town what good looks like. As twilight fell, the angels mounted their bikes again, the engines rumbling to life one by one. Ryder was the last to start his. He looked back toward the now empty road and muttered, almost to himself, guess angels don't always fly. Sometimes they ride. Tank smirked. You should put that on a t-shirt. Ryder chuckled. Nah, some things ain't meant to be sold, just remembered. With that, the crew rolled out, the low growl of their engines echoing against the mountains until it faded completely. But long after they were gone, the people of that small town still talked about the night the Hells Angels stopped by, and how, for a few quiet hours, the road brought heaven a little closer to earth. Back home, under the soft glow of a campfire, Ryder pulled the couple's note from his vest, the one that said, You've given us faith we thought was lost. He read it once more, then tucked it back into his pocket, smiling faintly. Guess that makes two of us, he whispered. If this story touched your heart, share it. Because kindness doesn't care about appearances, patches, or pasts. It just needs a spark, a moment, a heartbeat of courage to change everything. Sometimes, the loudest miracles don't come from angels in the sky. They come from the roar of engines on the open road.